and start letting folks in. Oh, welcome everybody. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We'll give folks a chance to join the meeting and get connected to their audio. Hopefully you can hear us okay. We do have everyone muted just for the first part of this program. And then after Ron's finished with his presentation, there'll be a chance to raise your hand and ask questions or share stories. While we're waiting for a few more folks to join, I'm going to go ahead and share a couple quick slides. So just a few upcoming Lincoln Land Conservation Trust programs. We have our last noticing walk of the season on December 17th. And there are a few spots left last time I checked. So if you'd like to get out one last time this fall with us, we hope you can join us. Our last stewardship work day of the season is this Friday, December 13th. Really great group of volunteers who've been helping out once a month through the fall. I wanted to give a little quick teaser. We've got a great winter carnival activity schedule that's going to be on February 1st from 1 to 3 p.m. and that'll be a family-friendly enchanted forest adventure at Lincoln Station. So if you have kids or grandkids, it's a great activity, and that's going to be co-hosted with Farrington Nature Link. And then lastly, this is our first of our winter Zooms, and we're going to host 2 more in February. The first is all about how forests sequester carbon and kind of looking at different rates of carbon sequestration on February 11th, and that's going to be with a PhD student at Boston University. And then on February 13th, we're working with the Lincoln Tree Group, and we're going to invite somebody from the Charles River watershed to talk about trees as a climate solution. So kind of 2 related programs. And then just a quick membership appeal, because it is that time of year. We've been sending out some emails and a townwide mailer recently. So if you have seen that and haven't given yet, please consider doing so. Your gift supports our ongoing work, our land conservation, our land and trail stewardship, and free educational programs like this one. And just a quick note, we've got some great membership gifts this year, beautiful 2025 open space calendar with the cover photo by John Legates. We're giving out an evening primrose seed packet and a pocket nature guide. So with that, I'm going to do a quick intro of our speaker tonight. Many of you know him, Ron McAdow, a wonderful Lincolnite, real expert naturalist. I got the sneak peek earlier today, a couple of his slides and videos that you're going to see tonight, and I'm really excited. It's always a treat to see some beautiful wildlife photos. So I know Ron didn't want me to talk him up too much. He wants his presentation to speak for itself. So I think without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and then invite Ron to share his screen and start the program. I can see your slides, Ron.
Hello, everybody. Our subject is a place, Well Meadow. Lincoln's western boundary runs through this wetland. So to get oriented, here's Sudbury River flowing south to north. It passes through the kettle pond called Fairhaven Bay on its way to meet the Assabet River and form the Concord River. Well, at the northeast corner of Fairhaven Bay is a big swamp. And that's Well Meadow. It's in the heart of Walden Woods. Here's the Google Earth view. Here's Well Meadow. It's adjacent to a hayfield called Pleasant Meadow, which is a bit higher and drier than its neighbor. The term meadow covers both forms of treeless flat areas. In this picture, you see Red Rail Farm and the houses along the forks of Old Concord Road and Codman Farm. Linden Tree Farm down here. I've taken pleasure in learning something about the plants and animals of this fertile spot. You see Well Meadow Brook coming through the middle of the swamp, and 3 beaver dams, 1, 2, 3. My trail camera gathered videos from the east end of the most upstream beaver dam. It was right here. Here's that dam. When the Sudbury River is high, the swamp floods and the dams don't do much. For more than a year, I had cameras pointed at various angles to photograph this end of the dam and the adjacent point. To my delight, a group of river otters has been in regular attendance. River otters weigh about 20 pounds. They're the largest members of the weasel family in North America, except for wolverines. This shows the dam at a lower water level. Numerous other species of mammals and birds have appeared at the dam, including this red-tailed hawk, hunting from tussocks. Who knew? And coyotes. The plan for this presentation is generally to follow Well Meadow through the year, but to avoid excess choppiness, we'll look at some species out of that order. As you can see from the camera's timestamp, we are in March. Because of my lifelong fascination with wild animals, I've been peeking at them through these motion-triggered cameras all through the current century. The beaver dam at Well Meadow is the best place I've ever had a camera. If you post one in a poor place, nothing passes by, or just chipmunks. In better spots, larger animals make brief appearances. This is outstanding good fortune. The otters are actually behaving in view of the camera. What are they doing? I'd say the technical term for this behavior is fooling around. River otters stay active all winter. Oh, bumped the tripod. They have a thick coating of fat and their underfur is dense and durable. Listen now. That's their vocalization, or one of their vocalizations. The dam and the adjacent bank are a heavily used latrine. A lot of fish scales pass through their digestive systems. The red scat indicates a diet heavy in crayfish. When Sudbury River rises high enough, the water level in Well Meadow completely submerges the beaver dam. Really, what can you say about wood duck drakes? They're so fantastic. So this drake is followed by a hen, who's followed by another hopeful drake. A lot of commotion on this date. A lot of drake wood ducks and a lot of commotion. March foreshadows our spring, and then in April, our vegetation really gets going. This is Well Meadow's big beaver lodge, seen through the blossoms of a red maple. Also in early April, this is a view down from the trail down into the swamp. I have puzzled about the name of this swamp. How long has it been called Well Meadow? What does the name mean? In his journals, Thoreau has many references to Well Meadow. It seemed unlikely that he had named it because in Shattuck's 1835 History of Concord, the mouth of Well Meadow Brook is given as a point for the town's boundary with Lincoln. From there, the boundary is the Sudbury River until it reaches the corner where the four towns of Concord, Lincoln, Wayland, and Sudbury meet. I wondered if that reference to Well Meadow would be reflected in Lincoln's archives. We have the original record book. The first page has the bounds of the town. So we know that Well Meadow was so called prior to 1754, when Lincoln was set off. By then, it might have had that name for a century when the Billings family acquired this area at the time of Concord's second division of land. Do you understand the code of topographical maps? The widely spaced contour lines show flat places, and the closer together they are, the greater the slope. So notice the steep banks of sand that the glaciers left all around the edge of the swamp. Water seeps in from all sides, especially at the numerous springs. One of the springs looking down from the trail. This map shows the trails, and our view is from the box. The creators of the Oxford English Dictionary found 33 senses for the word well, but the very first definition is a spring of water rising to the surface of the earth and forming a small pool, now archaic. So it really seems safe to conclude that Well Meadow is named for the many visible springs of groundwater at its edges. Hazelnut shrubs are early bloomers. The male flower is a catkin, the female a tiny ruby-colored blossom. In his first book, Emerson wrote, "The succession of native plants in the pastures and roadsides makes the silent clock by which nature tells the season's hours. The tribes of birds and insects, like the plants punctual to their time, follow each other and the year has room for all. For me, the flowering of beaked hazelnut marks a place on nature's silent clock. From Thoreau's journal in April of 1852. Scared up 3 blue herons. It was a grand sight to see them rise so slow and stately, with a graceful, limber, undulating motion, their 2 legs trailing parallel far behind. Here's skunk cabbage. In April of 1856, Thoreau wrote, "In the warm recess at the head of Well Meadow, which makes up on the northeast side of Fairhaven, I find many evidences of spring, pushed up through the dead leaves, yet flattened by snow and ice, which has just melted here. Behold, the skunk cabbage has been in bloom." You can see the flower under the hood. When I came upon this remarkable sight at the edge of the swamp, I had no idea what it was. My botanical betters thought it was a shoot of false hellebore, and they were right. Veratrum viride, American false hellebore, a plant found in floodplains and swamps. I read that Native American tribes used this to treat madness and hair loss. Sadly, I've come to this knowledge far too late. Thoreau on May 10th, 1853. I sit here surrounded by hellebores 18 inches high or more, with handsome plaited leaves regularly arranged around the erect stems. Here's a trickle that flows out of the spring at the upper end of Well Meadow. April 8th, 1856, Thoreau recorded, "There in that slow, muddy brook near the head of Well Meadow, within a few rods of its source, where it winds amid the alders, I find 2 cowslips in full bloom." Cowslips was his name for what we usually call marsh marigolds, which still bloom happily in the very same location. Here's Well Meadow Head at the end of April. The tussock sedge stands out. Here's the sedge in flower amongst skunk cabbage and hellebore. The front stem is ready to open and the back one has already begun. Shadbush in bloom in April. Thoreau listed deer among the species that had been wiped out hereabouts. They too used the beaver dam. It's always nice to hear spring peepers, isn't it? A pair of red foxes had a burrow to the west of the swamp, but their preferred hunting ground were on the other side, so they went back and forth across the dam. This young fox was brought up about half a mile from the dam. The photo was chosen for May in next year's open space calendar. I was excited to find these clips on the camera's memory card. I have never seen a bobcat in person in New England, but here they are. They can weigh up to about 30 pounds. Raccoons can get up to about 20 pounds. That makes them significantly bigger than red foxes. I've seen red foxes defer to them. Last May, I was going to retrieve the memory card from my camera when I was halted in my tracks by the sight of this bird. I took out my cell phone. It was a solitary sandpiper. This is the habitat for them, fresh water. I didn't watch it for long, though. It was disturbed by new arrivals. You'll see the otter do a double take in my direction, and then vamoose. He was kind of cool and nonchalant at first, and then he turned it on. Okay. So now it's May, and perhaps by this time the mother otter is denned up with the newly born otter pups somewhere, but the yearlings are still together and they're often at the dam. Otters can stay submerged for up to 4 minutes and can swim a quarter of a mile underwater. They have long, stiff, highly sensitive facial whiskers that help them detect and seize prey where there is little light. They seem to have a lot of itches. Here in the middle of May is Pleasant Meadow, lives up to its name. Late in May, Pink Lady Slipper on the Well Meadow Trail, and Blue Fag in the swamp itself. We get all this for free. Here's the unhandsome but industrious creator of this wonderful location. As you see, in the season of abundant foliage, they partake of tenderer food than trees. And here, for comparison, is a muskrat. Muskrats weigh between 2 and 4 pounds, whereas beavers go from 30 to 65 pounds. Beaver colonies typically include the two parents, the young of the previous year, and the new young. So it's not surprising to see that the encounter between these two is cordial. Beavers were common here before the first English immigrants made their pelts valuable, and deforestation eliminated their habitat. There were none here in Thoreau's time. In the past 100 years, much of our forest has grown back. Trapping has been restricted, beavers were reintroduced, and they've become abundant. They create rich habitat for many plants and animals. Wasn't I pleased that they decided to work on their dam right in front of my trail cam? That's a look. I think it's kind of nice to see one eating something that doesn't make you mad. My wife is a hardworking gardener, and she wishes I were the kind of person who would smite woodchucks and deer. I think this is the first time in mid-June that the new generation of raccoons showed up at the beaver dam. Although I always keep an eye out for birds, I've never seen a Virginia rail. What a surprise to see these little black chicks. Probably the nest was in one of the sedge tussocks. And here's a better look at an adult Virginia rail. In Birds of Massachusetts and Other New England States, Forbush wrote, "The Virginia rail is a bird of freshwater marshes, secretive like all rails. It follows hidden passages through dense vegetation in which, unseen, it can race rapidly from place to place at the least alarm." Well, now we're in late June. Wood ducks nest in tree cavities such as those created by pileated woodpeckers. When the ducklings hatch, they plummet to the ground and follow their mother to water. They're actually eating duckweed. Four days later, another hen brought younger ducklings to the dam. Count them as they enter the water. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Here's swamp azalea in June, very fragrant waterside flower. You hear the young raccoons in the daytime. And then the silvery light at twilight. This is at in dawn, and when the camera is still on black and white, but the day there's more light in the sky, gives it this silvery effect. You can still see the eye shine from the animals. The young otters first appeared in a thunderstorm. They soon returned for a long visit to the dam. You might notice that the mother has a pink scar over her left eye. So Well Meadow Brook begins right here. This is the source of the brook. And this is what it looks like this time of year, looking from above the source, above Well Meadow Head down toward Fairhaven Bay. In a drought, the shore of Fairhaven Bay is exposed. The mouth of Well Meadow Brook is to the left. Here's the brook, still flowing, fed as it is by groundwater. The exposed shoreline attracted birds eager to feed in the warm, shallow water and mud. This is an experiment using half of my binocular as a teleextender for my cell phone. It was awkward, but somewhat successful. Buttonbush is a native shrub common along the edge of the Sudbury River. I think it's great. The swamp white oak likes to have its feet wet. This is near the patch of buttonbush at the mouth of Well Meadow. Swamp white oak is an especially dignified tree, seems to me. Looking up Well Meadow at high summer. Sweet pepper bush, a fragrant shrub found along the water's edge, blooms in late July and early August. Clethra alnifolia, the only botanical name that sticks in my mind, sweet pepper bush, by the Well Meadow Trail. In mid-August, these pink stalks caught my eye. It's called water smartweed. Polygonum amphibian, it's a successful wetland plant that grows naturally in the New World and the Old. I'm conscious of shortchanging invertebrates in this presentation. Here's one though. It's a red-spotted purple butterfly. Turned out there were 5 young raccoon. I get a kick out of the way the last one kind of has to hurry to keep up. By September, we're seeing the red dragonflies, the sympetrum. I was surprised that they could trigger the camera's motion detector, but they could. Late summer's red dragonflies are another mark on the dial of nature's silent clock, as Emerson put it. The great blue heron came to the dam. A few days later, a green heron appeared. Here it is. It's a little hazy. I don't see them as often as the great blues. They're less conspicuous. This is Well Meadow Head, late in September. From a state wildlife fact sheet, the raccoon is well known for its tendency to, quote, wash its food before eating it. Although it appears to be washing the object, it is believed that it is actually inspecting it for any portions that should be rejected. A raccoon's sense of touch is enhanced when its paws are wet, and by feel, it will tear and discard any unwanted portions of food. The raccoon only performs this ritual if water is close by. If no water is available, then it will simply eat its food without further inspection. Otters could play music, you know they'd play jazz. I want to thank John Klein for scoring this series of clips. Well Meadow in mid-October. Let's look at some other species. Well Meadow has frogs, of course. This is called a green frog. And here's a bullfrog. You can tell it's a male bullfrog because the ear is twice the diameter of its eye, whereas females have an ear about the same size as their eye. And you can tell it's a bullfrog because the what is called the dorsolateral line bends around the ear. Let's go back to the green frog. It goes straight back from the eye in green frogs. It's the only clip I have of an opossum. Only time one appeared at the dam. In the warm months, the preponderance of camera triggers are by chipmunks. Often they dart through the frame, but this one auditioned to be seen by you. The forest is full of mice. I suppose the bobcats, foxes, and the other predators rely heavily on them, and owls. In Thoreau's years, in the middle of the 19th century, deer and beavers were absent, and other animals were otters were very scarce, but mink were around. Here's the mink, despite heavy trapping. They weigh about a pound. Minks are one of the most aquatic members of the weasel family. And this is, for comparison, the two weasels, this much smaller weasel, the mink, and the much larger weasel, the otter. Now here we have a member of the canine family. It's determined to baptize itself in otter scat. I just wanted to mention before I go on, though, that that aquatic nature of the two kinds of weasels is reflected in the density of their fur. Otters have 58,000 hairs per square centimeter, beyond imagination. Mink, 24,000. The equivalent figure for humans, even fully furred ones, is 190. That's why they can live comfortably in, or I guess they're comfortable in cold water. Here's another member of the weasel family. Fishers occasionally visit the dam. There's a freeze frame, a frame capture for that profile. Fishers are mostly nocturnal, but not always. Of course, we've noticed the same with raccoons and beavers and, for that matter, otters. They're all primarily nocturnal, but they show up in the daytime. Male fishers weigh 10 or 12 pounds, but females are half that. They eat squirrels, rabbits, mice, frogs, birds, berries, and nuts. They eat all kinds of things. The common name fisher probably came from its resemblance to the European polecat, which is also called a fichet. Fisher tracks. They have 5 toes with semi-retractable claws. They're good tree climbers. Fisher scat with its characteristic twist from the middle of the trail around Well Meadow in the middle of January. Last December was very wet and the dam flooded. It was very comical the way the raccoons kept using it until my camera got tipped over. But it was just barely out of the water, so that was good. A thin coat of ice on the flooded swamp reflected the lovely light in this clip. When the water went down, fantastic ice shells were left in midair. I wish we could have 3D photography. Well, we're almost through the end of the year we started, but we will see a few more videos. It was a wet winter and spring. And so when the dam went underwater, I moved the camera to the bank just above. Otters kept showing up and other creatures. If they can catch them on land, bobcats and coyotes prey on otters. I can't get over that tail wag. Only a few minutes after this bobcat departs, a group of otters appears from down there. So the bobcat apparently is aware that they're down there. And as you'll see, they are very much aware that the bobcat is up here. Okay. So this is 3 minutes later. And watch this lead otter sniff. That's exactly where the bobcat had been sitting. And these otters are very jumpy. But a few days later, they came back in a more relaxed frame of mind. Now this one at lower right is eventually going to yawn. So wait for the yawn. Has to roll around some more. Here's an instant replay of the yawn. Watching these animals witnessing bits of their lives leaves me feeling that the earth is theirs. We know we have imposed. Our land trust helps us try to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Wow, that was really nice. And it's so cool to hear sort of the comparisons to what the land looked like, several hundred years ago, and how special it is that the same animals and even more now are still calling it home. As you said, it was their land first. We're just visiting. So I'm gonna let folks unmute themselves if they want, and you're welcome to raise a hand and we can call on you if you have a question or comment for Ron, and I might interject. But we've got about 10 minutes or so before we have to call it a night if folks have anything to add. Um, I loved your musical interlude with the otters. They're so playful. Amazing to see them. Alice, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Audio, sorry.
There you go.
This is one of my first forays into these lectures, and I have so enjoyed seeing all this wildlife and just, I go for walks, but I just don't know all of what's around me. And I just want to thank Ron for this introduction for me, and it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. That's how I got started with the trail cams, that same feeling you had that, we love to walk outdoors. We don't see these creatures. They're wary. I often have the fantasy that a bobcat is watching me from way up above, but I'll never spot it. But years ago, I was on a tracking thing, and they were showing me bobcat sign, and I said to myself, I want to see not Bobby, the otter. I want to see the otters. And then I was told that at that time it wasn't a common thing like it is now, but that hunters were using motion triggered cameras, and that maybe I could try that. And it worked, but it's never worked like it did here at Well Meadow with the beaver.
That's great. Ron, we had a question from someone. How do you get to Well Meadow? Like, where are you walking in from? If you don't mind sharing tips.
I have a slide to show where you can park. Shall I reshare my screen?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, let's see. I don't need sound this time. So, so it's not easy to get to. Here's Well Meadow, and there's parking here at
So that old Concord Road.
yep, this is Old Concord Road, so you can park right there at the end of Old Concord Road. You can park up here in the Walden parking lot and walk down, walk around Walden in that way. You can park here and here at the Concord Land Trust's parking areas. So, but probably the most direct way is to park here. I'm sorry, here at the end of Old Concord Road in the parking along there, and walk up this way, and then down through that farm gate, across Pleasant Meadow, and then around Well Meadow.
Interesting. How often were you visiting the cameras, Ron?
Beg your pardon?
How often were you visiting to check the camera and the SD card?
Pretty much weekly.
It's amazing activity.
Well, otters have this habit of using a latrine, and it was enormous good fortune that they chose that part of the dam where I could put a camera as their latrine, which they were loyal to for a long time. And now they've moved on, so they're not there now. Don't see them.
Interesting.
Mm.
Mm.
All
And they
right,
clearly use the latrine to socialize and fool around, as I say, and use it as a mark of their territory.
Mm. So interesting.
yeah, it's very cool to see that interaction between the bobcat. They're sharing space, but not interacting directly. All right. Any other questions or comments for Ron? Give it another moment and then we'll call it a night if no one else has anything else.
Mm. Thank you so much, Ron.
Oh, wait, one last question and then we'll wrap up. Would you mind sharing what camera you're using, Ron? The brand?
I've used two different brands, and they are, let's see if I can, I've never been a gearhead. Here it is, yes. I was a Bushnell most of the time. So but a number of they're under $100. They're inexpensive cameras. They're waterproof. The Bushnell one did well, but other brands also do well.
Right. Well, thank you again, Ron. This was really wonderful program. We really appreciate you giving this presentation for us tonight. It was recorded, so everyone who registered, I'll send an email out early next week with a link to the recording, and you can go back and revisit your favorite video clips. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ron, and have a great evening.
Thanks a lot, Ron.